with the second type, which is randomized block design. Now, what we have to remember here is, here we did not explain bringing principle of local control. We did not say. We said about principle of randomization. We said about principle of replication. Now, the one I also said, how can we bring local control? How can we apply principle of local control in this design? But as such, it is not explained. The next one, randomized block design. Here is the principle of randomization, the principle of repetition, okay, replication, the principle of local control is applied. Now, how do we apply the local control? The local control is applied like this. We are actually creating block designs. We are randomly selecting the student from different block, homogeneous block. Now, what is the basis for creating this block? It's actually the IQ level, very low IQ level, low IQ level, average IQ level, high IQ level, very high IQ. So these are our blocks, homogeneous groups. Now, at random, I pick student from each group and I try to understand the effect of different statistical tests. I'm just looking at how good are students after the class how good they are after conducting a class on statistics by giving them different examination. Form 1 is one type, Form 2 is one type, Form 3 is one, Form 4 is one. So I'm giving all different questions. So that is principle of replication to the student which I have selected from each block. So I'm just looking at how effective was my class. That's one example, okay? It can be different ways. Here, I'm just looking at after a class on statistics, I just want to ensure that my class was effective for all category of students. I know that in my class, there are students with different IQ levels. So what did I do? I created blocks of students with each, with different IQ levels. So within very low IQ level, all are homogeneous. That is a homogeneous group. Between very low IQ and low IQ, there is heterogeneity with respect to IQ level. So what I do, I pick at random few students from very low IQ, at random from low IQ, at random from average IQ, at random from high IQ and very high IQ, and apply all these tests to ensure that my class on statistics was very effective to all category of students, no matter their IQ level was low or high. That shows the effectiveness of my class, right? Because if I'm saying that very high IQ level students perform well, maybe there is an extraneous factor called IQ that has contributed to their performance. But if I say that yes, a student of very low IQ level also could moderately perform in my class, then I can make sure that yes, my model of teaching statistics was effective for this particular student community. So that is what we call as a randomized block design. So in this design, we have principle of replication, principle of randomization, and principle of local control. Now, how did we bring local control? We created blocks. In this particular example, there were different blocks. Within the block, the community were homogeneous. Between the blocks, they were heterogeneous, right? So this is all about RB design or randomized block design. And now the next one is little extended version of this local control. Okay, because when you have more than one in this, you had only one extraneous factor which you considered as IQ level of student. Maybe there are many other extraneous, but the prominent one was IQ level of student. In a design where we know that there are more than one extraneous factor, this is very common with respect to agriculture research. Okay, the one which we are going to. There are more than one extraneous factor, then Latin square design would be the most appropriate one. So here, when I'm looking at what is the impact, or what is the yield of different seed category, I know that the fertility of the soil is one factor. right? I'm looking at how is it having impact on my cultivation, which is better. So you can find that there are many blocks being created on the basis of fertility level. So the first block, second block, third block, fourth block, fifth block. There are 5 blocks created based on the fertility level of the soil. Now, what am I doing? I want to know what is the yield difference of different category of seeds. So I know there are one more factor which I need to consider. So what I do is I create a design so that this particular, okay, X1 is my seed, which is applied to all category of all blocks of land which is divided on the basis of fertility level. Same as X2 is another seed category which is applied to all fertility level. X3 also, X4 also, X5. So I am in a position to say which one is best. Maybe if I'm going with a detailed research, I can say like this: X1 gives better yield in a soil with for this category D with D fertility level. Or I can say that X2 is more efficient with soil with B fertility. Or I can say that X3 is equally good in all category of soil. The fertility level of the soil is not so important for X3. So I can suggest X3 for the farmers with different fertility level. We know that the soil fertility level and the soil quality varies from place to place. So looking into that, I can give suggestions regarding my study. Same as X4 is actually a seed category. I have looked into all category of fertility levels, and I can say that maybe I'm just looking at and saying that it is good in B and C. If the fertility level of B and C it's so and so, or if your soil is resembling this particular category, then X4 is good for you. You may go with purchasing X4 variety of seed. Like, so this is actually where Latin square design is the principle of local control is little more tightly applied in order to give the correct results. In this case, we need, see, agriculture research, we know that there are many extraneous factors. Of course, this availability of light is another factor. Water facility is another factor, right? The change in climatic condition is another factor. We know that. So when you have many independent variables, and when you want to bring principle of local control in order to come up with correct decisions, there we will be going with Latin square design. We will be looking at Latin square design. That's why it's said it's often used in agriculture research. In fact, many of the research designs, as we said in our previous class, it has evolved from agriculture research, because that's where we need to apply the principle of replication. We need to apply the principle of randomization and the local control, the principle of local control, because we know the quality, even within a farm, the fertility level of the soil can vary. The quality of soil can vary. So we need to enforce the principle of local control in order to take correct decision to get the maximum yield. So Latin square design, here we have the principle of local control, we have the principle of replication, and we also apply the principle of randomization. Why? This seed is, this particular seed is applied to all. So likewise, at random, you are selecting and you are applying that to all parts of your land. So that is what we call as Latin square design. And the last type of design which we are going to define in our class is factorial designs, which is very commonly used in social science research. In fact, I would say most of your study would be using factorial designs, where we are looking at the impact of various factors, where we will be categorizing into independent and dependent, and we are looking at what is the impact of various factors on our particular design. Okay, so factorial design, that's where we use ANOVA, analysis of variance. When you have more than one factor, we go with ANOVA, analysis of variance test in statistics, and we will come to, maybe we will go with multiple regression model, right? And in much more sophisticated case, we'll go with structural equation model. But the basic applicable principle is factorial design. So let's see what it is. In case of factorial design, this is an example of simple factorial design. Here, you might be, as you can see, this is, you have two treatments with respect to the experimental variables, and you have control level, two control levels, that is level 1 and level 2. This is a simple factorial design, which is called as 2 into 2. 2 levels, 2 factors. So it is called as 2 into 2 factorial design. Now, I will just show this with an example. See here, as you can see, the control is intelligence level, where you will consider that as low row. This is something which we will create for, the basic output model, which we will be having for any type of social science research, where we're looking at the cause and effect relationship, okay? Causality. So here, this is level 1 and level 2. So that is, we have intelligence level, low and high, which is our control level. And we are offering treatment A to both of these, treatment A and treatment B to both these levels. And we are looking at what is the impact of this particular treatment on people with both IQ low and high. We will be also looking at what is the impact of treatment B too, and we want to see which is effective. We also will be looking into what is actually the impact of the total of treatment A and B with respect to people with low IQ. That is what we mean by row mean and column mean. This is actually a table which should be the first part of a factorial analysis research, where we look at the mean. And if I'm trying to interpret from this, I can say that the treatment B is more effective for both level, for people with low IQ as well as people with high IQ. B is more effective. And in fact, if I'm looking at here I'm just looking at one treatment, and if I'm looking at treatment A and treatment B with IQ level, then I can say that both these treatments were more effective with people with high IQ level. That's why it is 33, and it had just an impact of 19.4 for people with low IQ. That's how I go with interpretation. The same is I can go with repetition. If I'm going with a repetition, this I did with student community. Maybe the same treatment I did with, I want to know in which group my treatment is more effective. So I did with student community. I also went with the same treatment with maybe the local population, or I want to know the effectiveness of my professional training. So I went with student from Arts and Science College. I also went with training with professional students with professional studies. I also checked the effectiveness with people or students undergoing technical study, and just looking at which is more effective, which one is more effective. So that is something which I'm getting when I'm looking at the mean here. Maybe this is, I'm looking at the effectiveness of my treatment with people of low and high level. This is my first data of study data with respect to students from arts and science. This can be my second study data for students from the technical colleges. Maybe I will also look into professional category like legal studies as a third data. So this is actually a simple factorial design where I have two treatments and two control designs, right? So that is the first one. But when I'm talking about complicated factorial designs, things are very easy. Just listen to me. This is actually a model of 2 into 2 into 2, which means nothing. I have two treatments, treatment A and B. Okay, I have two control variables, control variable 1 and control variable 2. Okay, and I have two levels for each variable. Listen to me, two levels for each variable. Say, for example, I am looking at the same experiment, I'm just expanding it. Okay, so I know that the treatment, there are many factors, okay, which can affect my study. So first, I will go look at the effectiveness of treatment in different groups. I have two control variables. One is the IQ level, two is gender. That's my control, which I did not explain here. I had only training, two type of training, and the IQ as my two levels for IQ as my model here, control variable here. But in this model, I have two treatments, A and B. I have two control variables, which is I will be having IQ level and gender, two levels. Okay, so I have low IQ and high IQ, and gender, male and female. So I have different categories, control variable gender, or maybe I can look into different levels. I can complicate the model by different levels of like control variable 2 if I take as educational qualification. There can be different levels to educational qualification, right? The one with basic, the one with degree, the one with higher education, professional educational experience. So those are the different levels. So accordingly, the model will vary. Now this is 2 into 2 model, factorial design model. Two factors, two control variables, two levels for each. So that is why it is called as a factorial design with 2 into 2 model. Okay, it's maybe when you are listening it for the hearing it for the first time, you might be finding it little difficulty to capture the whole thing in one class. But slowly it will be easy for you as we try working out with experiments. So I'll just summarize what we had been doing in our today's class. Okay. We were talking about the formal designs, and as I said, the formal designs broadly. Okay, broadly can be categorized into completely randomized design, randomized block design, Latin square design, factorial design. Now, completely randomized design, the simple completely randomized design takes care of principle of repetition, principle of randomization, as well as the principle of repetition. Simple design, it does not take care of principle of replication. It takes only into consideration the principle of randomized. That's what we said here, randomly allocated to different groups. But then we know that the effect of two extraneous factors like the IQ level of the students, the training capacity of the trainer, excuse me, all can affect the effectiveness of the result, or all can affect the result being at par with the actual position. So that's why we discussed about random replication design. Here we are taking away the problem of that extraneous variable by applying the principle of replication. We are repeating the experiments in different groups and ensuring that we are getting the same result, or more or less same result, so that we can build this model. We are saying that training has an effect on the student community. The kind of training which we are offering have a positive impact on, or may not be having. The result can depend on that particular condition, but we will be able to arrive at a conclusion by applying the principle of randomization and replication. Now, what we know here is the principle of local control is not applied here. There are different category of students, or students from different culture, or maybe we are looking into a student community with a lot of heterogeneous factors. So in order to have some kind of meaningful control on the heterogeneity, we have discussed about a randomized block design. Here we apply the principle of replication, repeated experiments. As you can see, we applied the principle of randomization, selecting at random one student from each block. At the same time, principle of local control by dividing the entire student community into different homogeneous group based on their homogeneous, like IQ level. In this case, it is based on the IQ level. So that's what we call as principle randomized block design or RB design. Latin square design is an extensive version where we are bringing little more tough or maybe controlled effect of the treatment. Better local control is randomization, replication, and little more stringent local control is applied, and it is applied with respect to more than one factor when we are talking about lateral square design. And factorial designs, of course, it is we are looking at the cause and effect. We are looking at the independent and dependent factor, right? And simple factorial design, this is 2 into 2, where you have 2 treatments and 2 levels. So that's why this is called as 2 factorial design. The example which is being put here is you are given with 2 kind of maybe training, and you are looking at 2 levels like intelligence level, low and high, and looking at how effective is the training to the student community. And when you have more than 2 levels or more factors in a factorial design, you call that as a complicated design. Here you are considering 2 independent factors. One is IQ level, another one is a gender, or one is the educational qualification, another one is the gender. And each of these independent variable will be having different levels, and you are looking into 2 treatments. So in that case, if in this particular example, this is actually 2 into 2 into 2 factorial design, which is called as a complex factorial design, where you have 2 treatments. Okay, treatment A, 2 type of training or 2 type of experiments, and you have 2 control variables, and there is 2 levels for each control variable. So that will be called as 2 into 2 into 2. Okay, so here we conclude the discussion of experimental research designs.